Welcome to Feeding the Family with Dr. Kristin, where we help you navigate the challenges of feeding your family and learn about the role food plays in our health and relationships. Feeding and food relationships can be stressful, confusing, and even destructive. I'm Kristin, a pediatrician and mother of 4, who's been researching and sharing what I've learned about feeding for over 10 years. In this podcast, I'll share my experience and expertise to help our kids and ourselves with everyday survival tips for real parents. This podcast is about progress, not perfection. So let's get started. Welcome back to Feeding the Family with Dr. Kristin. I'm your host, Kristin. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than our usual episodes because it's just me. No one is here to join me. And today we've been talking about, or we're going to be talking a lot about family meals. We've been talking about family meals in some past episodes, particularly last week with Ann Fishel. But today I just wanted to take an opportunity to kind of give my own tidbits and keys for having successful family meals at home with your family. So the very first thing I really wanted to do was to kind of give you my definition, or what I think are sort of the bare minimum things to make a family meal. So in order to have a family meal, you really need to have 4 things. So number 1, you need to sit down together with your family. Number 2, you need to share the same food. Number 3, you need to be facing each other. And I added number 4, which is free from distractions, even though it seems like that should kind of be implied. In today's day and age where we've got iPads and iPhones and TVs all around us, I think it's important to notice that all of this really needs to be done without any outside distractions. So again, the elements are sitting together, facing each other, sharing the same food, free from distractions. And in last week's episode with Ann Fishel, we talked a lot about the benefits that come from family meals. And you may have tuned into this episode about family meals with the thought that you're really looking to see, how can I get my family to eat better or healthier? And the crazy part about family meals, or maybe the wonderful thing about family meals, is by just having family meals, you are more likely to feed your family better, healthier food. But to me, the really amazing thing about family meals is that the benefits go far beyond the food that actually goes in your mouth. So as we've discussed in previous episodes with Ann and with Miriam Weinstein, the outcomes for kids who have regular family meals, they are much more likely to, as small kids, be reading ready. They're much better to do, or they're much more likely to do well in school, more likely to stay away from alcohol, drugs, tobacco. There's less teen pregnancy seen in kids that have regular family meals. They just tend to have lower levels of stress and higher levels of resilience. And really, I think that a big part of that is just the piece where we have this tuned in daily check-in with our kids. But, if you are tuning in because your first thought was, I would really like us to eat healthier, the research also suggests that kids who eat regular family meals eat more nutritious meals, they eat more fruits and vegetables, and they tend to have lower rates of both obesity and eating disorders. So there's not a lot of things I can think of as a mom that I do that can have that far-reaching of an impact. So to me, if it's that simple, it's probably worth thinking about how I can do this and do it to the best of my ability. So that's where it kind of came. Because I'm corny, I have the 4 Ps of successful family meals. I think it's like a throwback from medical school. I always need acronyms and things like that to help me remember how to do anything. So my 4 Ps are to prioritize, to plan, to prep, and to play. So we'll go through all of those and I'll talk about what each of those means. Number 1 is prioritizing. So where that really comes in is that the truth is that society is not going to prioritize family meals for you. So I think, I'm not sure what all the shifts have been, but I think, throughout our lifetime, and certainly now, into our kids' lifetime, this isn't a day and age where nothing happens after 5 or 6 o'clock. Regularly work meetings, sports practices, music lessons, all of these things are generally crammed into a family's evening times, and that's pretty regular. And so the truth is that the society's not going to prioritize it for you. So if you really want this to happen, it's going to be something that you're going to have to be purposely prioritizing. That said, I'm not trying to say that nobody should do anything after school or in the evenings. I have 4 kids, and they definitely all have activities that occur at one time or another throughout the week. And so it does become a process of actively prioritizing what you want to do with each evening. For us, I think, and I think for a lot of families, COVID was sort of a good reset on that, in the sense that when all of those things went away, we suddenly realized that, I think for a lot of us, number one, we had time to start instituting these family meals, more time to cook, more time to eat together, no choice really, except because there was nowhere else to go. But for us, it was a good reset, because I think now that things have started to come back, having had that perspective to realize that, all the world didn't fall apart when we weren't super overscheduled in the evening, has allowed us to kind of have that perspective. So I would encourage you to kind of use this opportunity as we move back in, select those things that you really did miss while they were gone and that you felt like were really important in your own and your kids' lives. But thinking about all the benefits that can come from family meals, look back and say, are these activities are we really enjoying them? Are they really my kids really gaining anything that outweighs the benefit from having us all together in the evening for a family meal? I think the other thing that can be really helpful is to just look at your week and look at your family's life, and to say, it's very possible that dinner time is not the time that works best for us. So there's lots of families that have varying work schedules or activities that are very important that can't be missed. And so looking at your week and saying, we say family meals and think a lot about dinner time, but for a lot of families, breakfast works better. Maybe weekend brunches, maybe, early evening snack before someone has to head out for an evening shift at work. There is no wrong answer. It's just realizing what works best for your family. My other advice would be, and we've heard this from other guests who have come on and talked about family meals, is to definitely start small. So if it's something that you're really not doing now, just plan on trying to have one family meal, maybe a birthday or a special event. If it's something that you don't do regularly, you could try to just do once a week. I know a lot of families, even with older children who maybe have even moved out of the house but still live locally. I know a lot of families that host regular Sunday night meals. And so it's amazing to me how you can still make that experience and the benefits of these family meals even trail off into adulthood if you have kids who live locally. So it's a little bit about being creative, but those things aren't going to happen on their own. So you really have to make it a priority. And once you're in the habit of regular family meals, I think that you'll find that it's actually easier to make some of the other changes that you'd like to make in terms of the way that your family eats. Because once you have a structure and kind of a plan for your week, it actually becomes easier to make the little tweaks where you're perhaps choosing healthier dishes or trying to integrate new foods. Once there's a structure for it, it becomes a lot less cumbersome of an event to do. I think the other thing to remember as you're prioritizing family meals, and we've talked a lot about the benefits, is to always remember that the benefits really come in making sure that those experiences are pleasant. So all of the benefits that I talked about for kids, that really doesn't happen if those meal times are stressful or times of conflict. Now, that doesn't mean, in the entire upbringing of your children that there's not going to be stress or frustrations or anger at the dinner table. I think that's unrealistic. But when you come with the sole purpose of really making it a communal and a pleasant experience, rather than sort of with this objective of sort of getting a certain amount of food into people's mouths, that's when you really start to see the benefits. And that is where there's a certain thing that I think we've spoke about before that's called the division of responsibility, and it's sort of the brainchild of Ellen Satter. And that really talks about the different jobs between the parents and the kids. So for the parents, really your job as the parent is just to decide where we're going to eat, when we're going to eat and what food is going to be provided. And the child's job is to decide what is going to be eaten of what you've provided, if anything at all. And so at first, I think for a lot of parents, that seems a little bit anxiety provoking because we're all worried about what is going to, is my child going to eat? Are they eating enough? Are they growing well? But the truth is when you start to approach that, that's when you're really going to be able to prioritize the peaceful family meals and essentially be able to get all the benefits that come from those peaceful family meals. So that brings me to P number 2. P number 2 is to plan. And so I talked about this a little bit before, but really this comes down to, now you've prioritized it, you realize it's something big that you want to do, but it's not going to happen if you have no plan. What is it? Like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that really does come true. So it doesn't need to be, I think as adults, as parents, you make so many decisions and you have to plan so many things throughout the day. It can seem exhausting to have to plan one more thing. And I think that that's a reason that a lot of families aren't able to be successful with family meals. But I think if you can get into the practice of just having some loose planning on a pretty weekly basis, you can really get a very large return on that investment of time and see that planning family meals is not too difficult. So the first thing is to if you're just really getting into this, is just think about your regular weekly schedule. And that is where you might find like maybe dinner isn't the time for you, or maybe Wednesdays are just so crazy, there's just no way that everybody's going to be able to eat together, and that's fine. I think it's just looking at what works. Maybe knowing, Tuesdays we eat a super early dinner, and Thursdays we're going to have to eat late, and that's okay, because once you get into it and you're planning for it, you can just kind of roll with the punches. The other thing that I do is that I just look at my calendar every day. So you have kind of a regular routine, but we all know things change from day to day. So if you look just first thing in the morning, like what's my calendar for the day? What's the kids' schedule for the day? Then you can kind of, as you look at that, say, well, dinner time's going to have to be around this time of the day, and I will or will not have much time to get it prepared. And that can give you a good idea of like, what kind of thing are we going to be eating tonight? The other thing too is to be realistic. So my younger self was definitely guilty of waking up and thinking I'm going to be a much more productive person tomorrow than I am today. So my entire success was built on believing that tomorrow I'll be very efficient and effective, much more so than today. So I would say be realistic, and if anything, be easy on yourself. So if you know you're going to only have a short time to warm things up and get them on the table, don't pretend like you're going to be creating some fancy 4-course meal for dinner. In fact, I would just have lower expectations. And if you can make it better, fabulous. Other thing I like to tell people is plan for help. So there's all kinds of ways that you can get help. You don't have to do this by yourself. Certainly, if you have a spouse or a partner, bring them into the planning and the carrying out of this. But also, it's an excellent idea to get your kids involved in planning and preparing meals. So not only is that time with your kids that actually extends all that benefit of communicating at family meals, but you're also teaching them valuable skills in the kitchen. And if kids have been involved in preparing food, they're often also more likely to eat and try new foods. So really, there's not a lot of drawbacks. Plus, it's helpful to you. On top of that, I always say get creative. There's all kinds of, sort of those meal delivery services where you can get ingredients for things that can help to let you try new things, and things are usually kind of semi-prep. That can be helpful. A lot of grocery stores actually offer things like that as well. And, do you have a friend that would be interested in doing something like this with it? I have friends who will, make a double batch of something one day and trade. Anything like that. Just don't be afraid to look for help and look in your community to see what can make your life easier, because it really in the long run is going to help you be successful. Another thing is that I think has been really useful in terms of the planning is because as adults, again, we all sort of get this decision fatigue. So to have sort of a loose weekly schedule of meals that you do. So it can be kind of fun and you can vary it within that. But like, for example, we've talked on the show about meatless Mondays, or I know somebody that does Motherland Mondays where they eat food that's sort of from their ethnic background every Monday. Taco Tuesdays is a very, very familiar one too. And I know in our family we'll do Taco Tuesdays, but usually that just means, some sort of Mexican food. So we might do enchiladas or quesadillas, but nonetheless, it just sort of reduces that decision fatigue when okay, it's Tuesday. I don't have to think too hard. We'll do one of these 3 or 4 things. And so people will do, a crock pot night or Italian night. Some nights that I know families that, every Friday night they get pizza, whatever it is. I think just settling yourself into a routine doesn't need to be rigid, but it just allows you to not have to think too hard about it. The other thing is when I was practicing pediatrics, we would often have these handouts that we give to families, and they would contain information about how many servings of this food group and that food group that your child should be eating. And while that's all correct, and I think it's also good information to know, I don't think it's very useful as a parent. And I think a little bit it can be anxiety provoking if you think, well, I'm not sure if my child, is eating enough vegetables or drinking enough milk or what have you. And so I actually think another thing in terms of planning or just sort of loose framework for thinking was an idea that Amber Stott, who was on one of our previous episodes from the Food Literacy Center, was talking about the idea of just including a fruit or vegetable with every meal or snack. If you do that and you have a child that has 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, you've already offered them 5 fruits or vegetables every day without having to plan or portion or think too hard about it. So I think things like that, simple rules of thumb, can really be helpful in helping you just plan ahead without having to take a lot of time to draw things out. And then beyond that, I would just say, meals should be tasty and satisfying. And when you're looking to plan meals, make sure that a meal should probably include food from each food group and should also contain at least one thing that each member of your family will eat. So particularly for those families that are dealing with picky eaters, you can kind of reduce the stress level for everyone if there's at least one thing that your child will eat on that menu. And then again, depending on the ages of your child and sort of the extent of picky eating, I think it's really useful to always keep in mind that it is okay to separate foods out. So it's okay to leave sauces on the side or to have things that are sort of a make your own taco night or make your own pizza night. And that sort of allows all of us to eat the same foods, but sort of customize it to our particular tastes and sort of comfort levels with different foods. So I would highly suggest doing things like that. Number 3 is to prep. So you can have all the plans in the world, but if you come home and none of those groceries are in your house after work, the meal is not going to happen. So you do have to do a little bit of prep work. But again, I try to keep this as easy as possible and to a minimum. So the biggest thing is just to make sure that you have the food that you want to prepare for the week in your house when you need it. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to do every week a little inventory of what you've got in the house and what you plan to make for the week, and to make sure that you have those groceries in your fridge or your pantry. I find that online ordering is a godsend and has really been a huge time saver in terms of I've always actually been one of those people that enjoy wandering around the grocery store. But I will say that, as you get busy with work and with your kids, it isn't always the best option for your schedule. So definitely, if it's available to you, I highly encourage you to utilize online grocery shopping and either pickup or delivery if you can. And that helps a lot. It also really does help to reduce costs. I find I have a lot less impulse purchases at the grocery store if I stick with the online shopping. And then the next thing is to do yourself a favor and to try to prep as much as you can ahead of time. So again, especially as we talk about dinners, because I think that that's what when most families are able to get together, to think about, how can I make it easier for myself if I'm coming in the door with everybody? Everybody's hungry and we need to get something on the table. I know a lot of people that will do like a day of the weekend. So I know a lot of families, they'll do kind of a Sunday prep and they'll start to get stuff ready for the week. I know some people that will grill a whole bunch of meat on the weekend to use throughout the week. My sister-in-law will get her 4 boys in the kitchen and they'll prep some food for the week. And that's, that might not work every week and it might not be realistic for every family, but if you can carve out some time, especially at the beginning of the week, to even get some stuff cut up or, wash and chop your fruits and vegetables, it will pay dividends throughout the week. And I think, again, is time that is really well spent. The last thing would be, from a prep standpoint, is I think it's a good idea, again, in the morning, to do a sort of inventory of what am I going to do today. That's where sort of those like crock pot meals and things, if I can just have something I can dump in the crock pot in the morning, come home and dinner's pretty much ready. So again, sort of that little bit of time it took you to throw something together, maybe 5-10 minutes in the morning, to come home to dinner that's pretty much finished, well worth it. You just have to have that mindset of being a little bit ahead of the game. The final thing I would say in terms of being prepared is one thing that has saved us tons of times from having to go out and get takeout is to have a few things that you keep in your house that are sort of like a backup emergency dinner that are quick and easy. For us, I know I always have a giant like Costco-sized bag of frozen meatballs, jars of spaghetti sauce, and dried pasta. And that, spaghetti and meatballs will please almost anyone, is quick, it's very easy to make, and it saves you from having to, go drive through somewhere. So I would say that. The other one that we always do is Brinner. Like a breakfast for dinner. So we always have breakfast stuff in our house, and that's kind of fun for everybody too, and not too difficult to make. So whatever works for you, but I think to just always know that you have some sort of backup, you then never will have to have the feeling like, oh, there's nothing here to eat, because there's always a few favorites that you can throw out in the end. Okay, and that brings me to number 4. So number 4 is play. That might sound silly, especially if you have older kids, but to me, this is that reminder yet again that the real purpose of the family meal is to have a good time, have fun, and enjoy each other. So you can take play to mean to be as boisterous and playful as you would like. But I think, again, it's just that reminder to come and say, yes, we're all here sharing food and we're going to eat, but the main purpose of this is for us to all get together. And I love to hear from families in terms of the way that they sort of bring play and communication into their meals. And again, I know we talked about this a little bit with Anne. Our family will often do these highs, lows, and unexpected, where we talk about our day. We've had the families that did the happy and the crappy, what was the good thing and the bad thing today. Families that have like a little jar of a question that they ask each time at mealtime. And just the other day, I was having dinner with a gentleman whose daughters are older. I think 2 of them are out of the house and he's got one in high school. And although this isn't really play, I thought this was really brilliant. He said that, even when they were younger, they sort of said that the dinner table is essentially like the cone of silence, or maybe like Vegas. They say, what stays here with the 5 of us, or what we say here with the 5 of us stays here. And he said, and I found that really, when we drove that home and they knew that this was sort of the safe space and nothing was going to leave this dinner table, it really kind of got the conversation spurred and sort of taken to the next level. So I think things like that can be really useful. On the flip side, using resources like the Family Dinner Project, where they have actual games that you can play at the table. And, we've done that from time to time, and it's great to switch it up. It keeps mealtime super fun and exciting, and really, makes it an enjoyable experience where everyone wants to keep coming back, and motivates you to keep doing the family meals. And again, just heightens all the benefits that come from the practice of having regular family meals. So I hope that those were helpful, the 4 P's of successful family meals. I would love it if it will help you to have more family meals and also to make the most of the family meals that you're having. I'm really excited because we're going to be having some members of the Mom Squad come in and talk to us about how they deal with family meals, their successes and challenges. And I would absolutely love to hear from you. So tell me what you would like to know, what you'd like to work on, what works at your house, and who you would like to see on our episodes. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Feeding the Family. I hope that you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next week on Monday with the Mom Squad.